Hey guys, welcome. Come in, come in. Hope you're doing great on this fine Thursday night. And we had this show after the 8 o'clock, put the kid to bedtime, at least if you're on this coast.
Right.
Put the kids to bedtime, right? Yell at everybody. I'm going to my personal space. Don't anyone bug me. That so we did that. But we're tonight coming to you from all across the country. We're going to be talking about what every parent should know about social emotional learning. We're going to show facts. We're going to back it up. Just marinate on this slide that I have up here for you while I introduce our special guest. So we've got Lisa Logan from, I hope I'm saying this right, Utah Parents United.
That's correct.
Yay. Okay. So I was hoping not to say parents first, but I think I did it. But Lisa, you have been on the forefront, your group, of really not taking the bait of, okay, CRT, let's get it, let's annihilate it, and then not know what it is. You're on the forefront of educating parents about the Trojan horse that is social emotional learning. And I commend you for that. We're going to talk to you in just a minute on that. Jason Littlefield, you're back again. You and I are buds because you're like the very positive granola-y type of SEL critic that's actually doing something about it through Empowered Ed. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you? Now, I appreciate that compliment. I'm going to take that.
Do you like the granola-y?
I do. Yeah.
But the beauty is that we're all over the country. We're in North Carolina, we're in Texas and Utah. And really this issue encompasses from border to border. So as we all know, there is a massive movement to rob the innocence of our children younger and younger. Now in North Carolina, we're seeing the first program that I know of that's ushering in critical race theory to disabled preschool children. And it's being done by a woman, the superintendent, who is in a party, the Republican Party, actually, and that particular party claims to be fighting CRT, right? And that just illustrates you've got to educate your students and your lawmakers, your teachers and your lawmakers and your citizens on what this really is. So yeah, we're seeing this younger and younger, but again, it is an orchestrated movement. It is not by accident. It is not innocent. It's purposeful. Whether it's this porn literacy that we're seeing that's also a part of identity, whatever it is, it's malevolent. So let's take a look at social emotional learning. It is not a piece of paper. It's not a curriculum, conveniently. It's a process. By the way, you really can't come up after a teaching that's a piece of paper as much as you can in process. The first is data collection. You don't have the surveys, you don't have SEL. So that's why it's important. In every single state, everywhere I'm talking, you got to knock the surveys out. Data collection is key, not only in the form of surveys, but as you will see tonight, classroom exercises. They're going to force children to self-disclose. That is how you break down the identity. Breaking down a child's identity is very cruel, manipulative, yet that is the chrono of social emotional learning. It's to isolate. The manipulation comes in with CRT. That's how you do the manipulation. And of course, in North Carolina, we now offer psychiatric interventions with or without parental consent. Lovely. Then the identity reformation. We'll start with historical narratives, using propaganda, social pressure, and then in North Carolina, we have psychiatric treatment. Guys, what do you think about what I've said here?
It's pretty accurate. Yeah, and that's actually even something I'm fighting right now in our legislature is the data collection of this very, very sensitive data of our kids. And we don't know where that's going, right? These third-party vendors like Panorama collect this data, and we don't know if they're abiding by the terms of their contract and not selling it or doing anything like that with it. And you have to ask, what do they want with this social emotional data of our children?
So yeah, and Panorama is one vendor, and the cool thing, if you will, is that it's just one vendor. Sometimes it's almost worse whenever you have teachers and schools told to, hey, find your own surveys in classes. We see that a lot too, and that's nothing short of absolutely horrific. Let me just, for the sake of conversation, put up and show you guys what a panorama survey looks like. Are you seeing this? Okay. So this is a student SEL survey. What you're seeing now, does it look a lot like an intake survey if you go to a psychologist or primary care to assess whether or not you're depressed?
Yeah.
That's no accident. Labeling is critical. When you label, you can control and manipulate. The struggle to define, it's a political struggle, and it's key. Once they've got this information, and by the way, this is a snapshot in time, right? I mean, I could be on one end of the spectrum and the other, but that's before coffee with me and then after. So it's Jason, it's very transient, right? It's very transient, but it's a way to label. And so there's a misnomer out there that these surveys are not attached to a student's ID. That's bunk. What you're seeing right here is attached to the student's ID on the computer. And then we have stuff like this. This is a beauty. This is sent out by not only the CDC, but states. This is a North Carolina survey. This is, by the way, to middle schoolers. Are you guys reading this? Because I can't see you when I'm showing this.
I think I'm still in the Panorama survey.
You're still stuck on that. Okay, so let me get off of that.
It's now, Sloan.
Oh, I got you. Okay, right when I exit. Well, let me read this to you. And you're going to wish that I didn't. It's asking middle schoolers, have you ever had sexual intercourse? Yes or no? How old were you when you had sexual intercourse the first time? I've never had sexual intercourse. So again, tricking them. 8 years or older, 9 years or older, 10 years or older, whatever. And you can bet your bottom dollar that they know who's taking these surveys. Let me tell you another question. By the way, this is not an SEL survey. This is one related to SEL, but we've seen SEL surveys like this or worse. How many people have you had sex with? 1, 2, 3, 10, 12. The last time you had sex. Middle schoolers. Passive parental consent. That means we'll give you a notice somewhere in the kids' folder. If you miss it, tough noogies. And here's the beauty. How long would it take you to get ready to fire a loaded gun without parental or other permission? Then that could be yours or someone else's, blah, blah, blah. Now, this is asking, kids to out their parents or their neighbors or what have you. Okay, I'm just going down the rundown. What you're looking at now is an SEL survey. It's asking children to rank their privilege. In other words, it's robbing a child of their innocence, their privacy. This is an SEL exercise done in at least 3 counties in North Carolina. I do or do not have privilege based on my color, my sexuality, my gender, my privilege, my physical ability. This is an SEL exercise. Let me show you another one. And I think it's important that we get through these exercises so that you see the rest of our show. It ain't hyperbole. This is in Johnston County, North Carolina, fairly rural place. What's your gender? What's your age? LBGTQ means pertaining collectively to people, blah, blah, blah. How many people do you know part of the LGBT community? What are your thoughts on that? And I guarantee you get caught as a teenager answering the wrong questions, and you really will be depressed, because being canceled as an adult is bad. Being canceled as a teenager, demonstrably worse. Here's another question. On average, how many hours a day am I alone? Again, giving social services a potential reason to come in and sweep down on children. So let me show you an exercise, a classroom exercise, because this is going to be important to the discussion. A typical one, we've seen this, I don't know how many times in North Carolina, even across the country. This is to kindergartners in Moore County. Okay. And I bring up these counties because in North Carolina, kind of conservative county, relatively speaking, socially. Gender identity, your womanness, your manness. Gender expression, femininity, masculinity. This is kindergartners, guys. Sexually attracted to women, feminine, female people, men, masculine, crazy. Here is another exercise from an SEL class. Okay. By the way, this is fairly typical. This is a classroom exercise for middle schoolers in Orange County, North Carolina, meant to be a class discussion. What are the questions I have about my face, hair, chest, and body? Questions I have about growing up. Check all that apply. Why does everyone change the same way? When is it okay to kiss someone? You get the drift. Okay, up at the top here. Do I have to diet? Is it okay to be excited about growing up? What if I don't like my legs, breasts, or lips? Can you imagine? Here's another one. Here's another tactic. This is about robbing a child of innocence and manipulating the hell out of them to get them to self-disclose. About my friends. My best friend's name is Sally. My best friend thinks that I am whatever. In other words, do you see the manipulation? This is, what would your best friend disclose about you? Something my friend does or says that worries me. Another disclosure. So now we can have a more full, I believe, conversation about what social emotional learning actually is. Jason, do people lie about social emotional learning at the state level? Do superintendents lie and say, it's cool, man?
You know, I don't know if they're doing it to lie. I think there's just so much confusion around SEL, and I do believe that at the grander level that confusion is intentional. But just the other day, I was listening to Castle's new CEO, Dr. Samuel and Tim Shriver speak, and even around minute 12, Dr. Samuel said, we need to clarify what SEL is. So even Castle now is, because the definition that you have, that's what SEL was prior to December of 2020, when it changed to transformative SEL.
Let's put that up there. You're exactly right. Let's go ahead and put up, and this transformative SEL, by the way, this is what is on, was on the DPI's website until we drew attention to it and they removed it.
So what I think, and what I've been saying, I was an SEL specialist from 2014 to 2021 in one of the original Castle Collaborative districts. So I saw what it started out as, and then I also saw it start to evolve around 2017, 2018. And I was constantly saying, we really need to examine our approach. And that goes back to something that Tim Shriver said around minute 2036. I want to quote because he's on point. And this is Tim with Castle. He said, when things get a little distracting and politics start to steal away ideas that are used for political advantage, we have to go back to grounding ourselves. So I'm hoping that Castle, and they're starting to become aware of the criticism, I'm hoping that they will look at their tools and look at their approach and the materials and the items that you're pointing out. Notice that those items are part of the new ideology in which the individual is broken down. So the philosophy, the approach that is being utilized in SEL believes that the individual is problematic. So what we need to do is break down the individual for these political goals. And the political goal ultimately is to remove autonomy. And as human beings, we are meant to be autonomous. We are wired to be autonomous, to pursue our own well-being in ways that are meaningful to us. And the current trend where SEL is kind of, the train has left the station, but it's not too late, is designed to break down the individual. So
Correct.
that's why I started developing an quote unquote SEL framework designed to uplift and fortify the individual, one that views the individual as the moral authority of society, which in a free society, that's typically what we all believe. But I noticed even on my SEL team that not everybody believed that the individual is the moral authority, but they would never really discuss. Then, we talk about the mental health crisis and things that are really hurting society now, but this ideology is designed to do just that.
Yeah, exactly. So what we have here is, I'm going to show you two definitions. First of all, this is transformative SEL, and you can see that it's redistributing power to promote social justice. Now, this is important also in North Carolina, and this is forced down at the state level down. This is forced into all 12 academic areas. And I'll show you in just a minute what it looks like in math. It's crazy, right? Why would you put social emotional learning in math, especially whilst there is such an amazing learning loss, right? Foster desirable personal and collective outcomes. Desirable to who? Well, guys, that'd be the government, right? Yeah, Lisa, since this is promoted by the government, it stands to reason that's who's choosing it. Now, you're talking about transformational SEL. This is on North Carolina's website. Well, it was until they hit it. So you can see here a picture of a transgender teen, whatever. And so when I tell you that breaking down identity is one of the key things, I'm going to read it to you here. Review of the core competencies in North Carolina, examining the importance of both personal and collective identities, engaging in identity exploration, and coming to a resolution regarding one's identity. When you're playing around with the identity of children and trying to confuse them and inculcate in them an identity that is not theirs or came about naturally, you get what's called personality diffusion or identity diffusion. And it's the precursor for schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder, and bipolar. And if you don't believe this is child abuse, why don't you go and ask any psychiatrist or maybe even a counselor on how hard it is to treat those three conditions in adolescence and in adulthood? And why don't you ask them the suicide rate of all three of the conditions that I just mentioned? When you go in and start doing this stuff, Lisa and Jason, now they're doing it to pre-K and first graders, where you're introducing the idea that you can be any gender you want, and through lessons like I showed you, grooming them towards that. This is cruel and sick and very aggressive.
Well, and also the ideology is set up to where there's constantly new emerging groups as well. So there are groups yet to be named that children will be peer pressured into identifying with, or and that's part of what this is as well. So if we could just resist the whole big thing as one huge, horrible idea, and then kind of just shift away from it, that would be really optimum.
Well, I think too, where do you draw the line, right? So we have people thinking they can become different genders as far as identity goes. Now we have teens identifying as furries. We have teens identifying as plants. I know I watched a Libs of TikTok video the other day where one of the children's pronouns was clown and clown self. Where do we draw the line eventually where we say this has gone too far, right? Where it kind of crosses the line into mental illness, and we're accepting realities that just really aren't true to life.
Right. And we're using taxpayer dollars to do that. Now, I know that that's the least of our worries. However, people without children, the fact that child abuse and human rights abuses is being committed in your name with your tax dollars, it should piss a lot of people off, no?
It definitely should. I want to, I saw a comment and really want to talk about the notion of privilege, and SEL talking about privilege. And that's essentially creating an undignified world. If somebody is honored as privileged or perceived as privileged, there's no dignity in that interaction, and there's no human dignity in that moment. And without human dignity, there will always be harm. Whenever we can't see somebody as we see ourselves, we build the psychological systems to do that person harm. So this constantly different identities and seeing each other as different is building up the psychological basis for prejudice, aggression, and cruelty, which those are all human capacities that we have. So this hyper focus on others and the group is designed to fortify these groups so they'll be in battle with each other. Because no matter what identity group you are in, to some degree, you are an oppressor and you do have privilege. Every single identity group, unless you are,
right,
I guess, half Black, half Indigenous, trans, but if you put all those things, if you put all those things together, you come up with a combination that's impossible.
but
I don't think you can be trans, gay, and non-binary.
Right. You're talking about intersectionality, and you make a good point, because one of the sheets that you looked at, an SEL exercise, by the way, that was in Charlotte from a homeroom class. I don't know what the heck that's about, but it asked children to stigmatize themselves based on privilege. And that's what it is. These labels, Saul Alinsky used labels for control. Labels are always used for control. How many times have you heard book burner, racist, white supremacist in doing this work? The labels, by the way, and if you ever hear that, parents, you never dignify that with a response. If you hear that, say, no, the issue is blah, 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 blah. Don't ever address that. But we know that. 7th graders don't know that. And they're in front of their peers, and their teachers are doing this, Jason.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish we could reach kids, and let them know. I have a 20-year-old in college, and he was telling me, he's like, you can't even be independent minded without people saying you're on the side of the oppressor. And I told him, I was like, I said, you just tell them, say, no, thank you. I don't believe in that neo-Marxist worldview, and just kind of step away.
What you just said is exactly what they're doing. Again, this came off of the North Carolina DPI website until we exposed it. And by the way, we're not the Lone Ranger here. We're finding this everywhere. And I'm going to tell you this too. In Indiana, I believe they're writing an anti-SEL bill, and in Oklahoma, I know they are. But get rid of the surveys, you guys. It's as simple as that. You get rid of the surveys, you get rid of this crap. So what you just said is important. Here is what they're doing in every class to every student to make sure that they're responsibly making decisions. Number one, considering the diversity salience and climate, whatever the hell that is. Number two, assessing the impact of beliefs and biases. Because if you've got the wrong think now, you're going to have to assess the impact. Pursuing inclusive, mutually beneficial solutions. To who? To the government? To a teacher that they just pulled off the street, as often they have to do now because of these teacher shortages? And reflecting on the broader ethical consequences of one's decisions for intragroup and intergroup institutional relations. This is Marxist. This is insanity. This is Mao for Olds program of extinguishing the right, the human dignity, Jason, as you said, and the right for a child to hold their own beliefs and thoughts. Lisa, have you've reviewed all this stuff before? Are they doing the same bilge in Utah?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said earlier, I was meeting with legislators trying to inform them about how dangerous this data collection is, not just from a data privacy standpoint, but from the viewpoint of, like you were saying, it's, one of the surveys you put up said, how many genders are there? And what if a child answers just two? Will they be stigmatized? And when we talk about where this data is going and what this whole data collection about SEL is going, is that they're measuring these children's beliefs, values, and attitudes, and they're putting them in a P20 system, right? They're recording it in this longitudinal data systems. Organizations like the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which is a UN agency, is collecting them through their study on social and emotional skills.
I want to put a pin in what you're saying, because the P20 system, I want you to understand what the P20 system is. That means this raw data will be stored from pre-K through the workforce. So at first every child, even in preschool, is issued a unique student ID. Okay. So this information travels with them through there. Then it's connected to a social security number, if they don't already have one, at 16, 18, whatever. Now in North Carolina, what they're doing at the state level, check this out, is they're connecting system within system. That means the DMV, Department of Health, Department of Education, Department of Corrections, all of them will talk to each other and link to your social security number. The raw data in and of itself is worthless. The analytics that drive the machine learning, that drive the surveillance system, like in China and the social credit score system, that's everything. In North Carolina, we happen to have SAS doing all of our stuff. SAS is also doing something called the Internet of Things for smart cities in China. Been doing it for years. So SAS, our provider collecting the data, has used algorithms to, create a police state and an opposition and an oppressive state in China. So the same company that's done it in China and a social credit score in China through the algorithms is now here working. Right. And you need to check out every state.
Right. No, for sure. And really what they say in my state is the goal for this is creating an emotionally intelligent workforce of the future. So what you're saying is, when you say it's going to lead to how they perform in the workforce. So we see groups like 6 Seconds talking about emotional intelligence being the hiring criteria of the future. So if these kids answer incorrectly on these SEL assessments, that they have particular ideals and beliefs that don't line up with the mainstream, what they want them to have, you have to ask yourself, how is that going to impact them getting into college, them getting a job. This is heavily tied into ESG scores. And when they talk about hiring an inclusive workforce, they mean an emotionally intelligent workforce. They don't just mean they're going to hire based on race anymore. So this is serious stuff. When we talk about ESG scores and social credit system, and I think people think, oh, they're just collecting data about how my kid feels, but it's not just that.
Yeah, for their own good, right? For their own good. It is absolutely not. It is totally manipulative, as evidenced by the fact that they're doing this longitudinal P20 data collection. We've written about it, and as evidenced by the surveys we showed you, and the slide I just showed, Jason, I think it breaks it down. If you've got the wrong think, you're in trouble.
Yes, and I can even attest to that in as an experience, because when I started questioning these ideas, around from 2018 all the way to 2021, I was really not very well liked and accepted in my peer group, but I kept pushing and questioning because I understood the history of the ideology, and I saw that it was negatively impacting our social emotional well-being. We are social emotional creatures. We just are. And right now, in this moment in time, we are in the midst of a social emotional crisis on our mental well-being and our health. So if we continue the path that we're on, doing social emotional learning this way, we're setting up future generations for failure. If there's a way to decentralize it and address the kernel of truth, we can develop emotional intelligence. But that does not look. Emotional intelligence from a collective standpoint looks a lot different from emotional intelligence from a classical liberal society, in which we are free to feel and think as we please, as long as we do no harm. And if we could get back to that versus developing a hive mind to be accepted.
So, Lord Sinister, I just explained what the P20 surveys were, and you've raised a good question. How do you stop the surveys? So those of you that are running for office and really want to reform and make change, you may be able to run on this. Hey guys, I'm not telling you to do away with SEL, but here's what we're going to do. Every single time, and I mean every single time there is a survey, parents will get a 3-day notice in the following ways: 1, 2, 3, and 4. And there's no passive opt-in. The way they're going to opt in is you will have a signature or a thumbprint or whatever it is. I don't care if it's an oral exercise or if it's an exercise in class, in every single class, every single time. That means the questionnaires I showed you and the class discussions I showed you, all of it, that's going to require an active, verifiable opt-in. And for every principal found to be in violation, it will be 5% of their salary docked. And then you hire 2 or 3 people at the state level who will be the office of compliance with that, who will deal with parents, right, who send in tip lines, etc. And I think you could get rid of this inside of a year, because who the hell wants to live in a police state? Now, I'll tell you, one of the excuses that I hear, or the reasons proffered for this, is equity. And so equity and systemic is based on their systemic racism. The schools are systemically racist, and we need this program. So if that's true, why in the hell would you allow a racist teacher or school system to collect data on your child? Why would you allow your child to live in a variable police state? Because if it's true that all teachers are racist, why are you allowing these classroom discussions? Why are you taking the chance that your child could be discriminated upon and the excuse that they use will be wrong think, when in fact it's the color of their skin?
And
I mean,
equity, hopefully everybody understands that when people talk about equity, we're talking about equal outcomes.
Mhm.
And the work that's coming out of the national, the National Equity Project, because that's the big national idea that's in the schools everywhere, and they talk about highly equal outcomes for all students. While my old district was pushing that idea, nobody could answer, how do we get equal outcomes for all students? How do you get equal outcomes without tyranny? How do you do that without authoritarianism?
yeah.
And
Well,
you
and
can't.
they'll straight up say equity does not mean equal. I actually found that in a document in our
Oh, yes.
data repository. And that's the whole thing. I posted something even yesterday on Twitter. They literally talking about redistribution of wealth and resources. Castle was at their 2019.
That's what we saw. Yeah, the redistributive justice.
Yeah, it's redistributive justice, and that's what equity means to them, and that's Marxism.
That is. And, I remember, y'all, I was having these conversations with people in 2017, 2018, like, these trainings are Marxist, because I was attending these. And I was like, this is weird. I was like, this is going to be a really, really big problem. And, now here we are. So I think that it's safe for everybody to say, there are Marxist ideas that are in every single institution. We, the individuals in these institutions, do we want to continue these ideas? Or what if we, the individuals in here now, we put a stop? We said, these are not for us. We do not want to pass these down to the next generation, because actually the real tyrants right now are about 10 or 11 years old.
Well, yes. And this is exactly, Lisa, what you said. This is from Castle's definition of transformative SEL, redistributing power to promote social justice. What in the hell does that mean? And I'll tell you, let's say for the sake of look, there are racist teachers, bottom line. So if you're going to leave it to a teacher to redistribute power to promote social justice, what's to say they're not going to redistribute it in a way that you don't find favorable? When you're asking for redistributing power, that is actively biasing, right? That is, I'm going to use my judgment, and this student, based on whatever, has too much power, and I'm going to redistribute it. And to foster desirable personal and collective outcomes. Well, we're thinking, okay, that is for social justice. But what if you actually do have a racist teacher against Black and brown students? It's going to be the other way. So people are so stupid that have promulgated this idea that we can do this from the state down. If you've got when you're making it okay to be a racist, the pendulum can swing either way, and it's period wrong, period.
Absolutely. And we see them manipulate. They always say, oh, we're not teaching critical race theory. We're not, like the legal theory. We're all not stupid. We know they're not teaching the legal theory that they actually teach in college in schools. What they do is they do CRT light, is what we'd like to call it. Where they're teaching things like power and privilege, and they sneak it in. We found in the second step social emotional learning curriculum, which by the way reaches like 20.5 million students across the nation. It's one of the most widely used. They talk about in the 8th grade curriculum power and privilege being one of the three main social factors that contribute to bullying. And then what they do, they don't come right out and say white people are the people with the most power and privilege, but they show cartoons as they go through the slides. And almost every time there's a white person in the position of the aggressor and a person of color in the role of the victim. And so they get kids to associate these things. And it's very kind of sneaky and subtle oftentimes, which makes it almost worse, right? Because in CRT, it's, you know, very, right. But in SEL, they're trying to sneak it in through these types of concepts.
So Jason, like, I mean, your story is remarkable. You were a teacher in Texas, and you were all aboard the SEL train until what happened?
Well, you know, not only was I all aboard the SEL train, but it's what brought me back to public education because I left in 2012 because I understood the ideas that the toolkit that we were using as an education system was not designed to strengthen the individual and the profession-centered bureaucrats and not students. So I was just like, I'm done. This is, you know, I appreciate it, but I'm out. But I came back because of SEL, because I saw this was the thing that was missing. You know, teaching about growth mindset, teaching about resilience, teaching how to teaching strategies to manage emotions, to deal with difficult situations, to learn how to persevere, to learn how to speak up for yourself, to learn how to do these things. I thought that is really, really important. So from 2014 all the way to about 2017, that was the direction that we were going. And then about 2018, you know, half or more of my team participated in a equity cohort, and they described themselves as being woke. You know, they actually openly used that term. And I questioned and, you know, tried to have conversations and push back, and it was not well received at all. There were no conversations. You know, I said, we need to examine our approach. We need to examine the approach that we're doing, because government, you know, is downhill from culture. Because I was also a history teacher. You know, I spent 21 years in public education. I studied history. I was a history teacher. I was a campus administrator, and then a district level specialist. So I began sounding the alarm many years ago with the hopes of stopping what we are encountering, what we are in the midst of now. I was really hoping to some way get out in front of it. But here we are, and it's not too late. But now,
right,
really, we need for every individual to roll up their sleeves and look at what's going on. You know, I heard the Pope a while back talk about cancel culture as ideological colonization. And that's exactly what is taking place. It is a new philosophical system. It's a new virtue system. It's a new way of thinking that is being imposed on all of us. And that new way of thinking is designed to do away with the individual. You know, this idea of individual liberty, individual freedom in the realm of human history is really maybe only about 50 years that we have had that, right? Like fully fulfilled, lived out. 30 to 50 years in the thousands and thousands of years of human history. So if that is an idea that this generation now feels is important, then we should figure out how do we preserve that for future generations, rather than it be dismantled only for a short existence.
Well said. You're looking again at the process that is SEL. You have to have the process. When you force self-disclosures, and look, a great model for this is look at the Mao education system. And it's important to look at that because this is a perfect analog to that. And I'll tell you, that produced the Red Guard. right? And really, when you strip children of their innocence and they become hardened, they become warriors, and they become somebody you don't even know in your own home. That's what this program is doing. It relies upon data collection then
And Mal shut down the schools too, by the way.
He did exactly like
to
what's
teach
going on
social
now.
justice.
That's right. He shut down the schools, exactly what you've seen now, which is what is kind of why you hear people like Catherine Truitt. This is hilarious, guys. And again, this is by no means an exception. Our superintendent here in North Carolina came out and said, Lisa, you're going to love this because it ties into your workforce training. She goes, we're going to retool the education system. I mean, we've been doing critical thinking stuff for way too long. This is the year of the workforce. And we're going to make sure that all children are prepared essentially for the workforce.
Well, we've heard this before, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've heard this before. This is not new. It's, she says the year of the workforce, but I mean, you can trace that all the way back to Mark Tucker. Mark Tucker, right after Bill Clinton got elected, wrote a 18-page letter to Hillary Clinton. It was called Dear Hillary. It's an infamous letter. And they literally talked about transforming the education system to produce workers for the global workforce. And back then it was cognitive skills, right? They were preparing people for certain types of jobs in the economy. But now it's social skills. And what's your social justice skills? That's going to prepare you for the workforce instead.
It's backed by World Economic Forum. So the program going into place here, and when you've got a superintendent that is demonstrably failing. I mean, we have, I think, 34%, I believe, of the EOGs, the end of year test, 34% of our 3rd and 8th graders were literate in math and reading. When you've got superintendents talking about remaking the education system when everyone's failing, you've got a problem, and you've got a revolutionary on your hands.
Well, and preparing for the workforce, most career data shows that the jobs that these students will have, those jobs have not even been created yet.
Exactly. So how the hell do you know what workforce you're going to create for? And they think they know, right? They think they know because, these surveys indicate that Johnny would be blah, 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 blah. Johnny's 10 years old. He doesn't have, the full cognitive skills. And so what they're doing, and this is so horrible to minorities. We had a person here that joined and said, I'm Black, I don't agree with this. And you shouldn't. And I think once Black and brown parents understand what they're doing, they'd be mad. Because when you look, total instruction time equates to intelligence, okay? Crystallized intelligence, that's a fact. So in China, I mean, I don't know if we want to push it this far, there's about 34, 35 hours per week of instructional time. In the US, it's about 14. All right. And so, but we're playing catch up. So what they're doing is taking the already little time in each class, Lisa, and they're putting SEL in every lesson, and they're watering down the time. Now, you can say, and I believe this, is that if you've got a 2-parent home, or if you've got money for tutoring, those parents can recover, right? But single parent households or parents that are not well off, they cannot make up for the time that this social emotional crap is wasting.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I don't know if you saw that comment come through. There's the person said that their child took a survey and said, this is exactly like the ones we take at the doctor. And I think we're missing a huge part of this too, as far as like manipulating the child and not thinking about the child. There are a lot of kids that can get triggered by these surveys. They're already in therapy.
It's called iatrogenic trauma. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they are not considering those students at all. And it can really cause panic attacks. And we're talking about teachers who don't have the
Yeah.
skills and the credentials necessary to handle issues like this in the classroom, administering these surveys and not being able to handle the fallout from them.
So let's look at a math class. This is, again, North Carolina. Here's how the math class, or excuse me, the SEL mandate in all 12 subjects. Here's how it presents in the math standard. And I have to tell you, I wish that when I was growing up, the math standard was like this, because I'm terrible at math. Okay. Provide vocabulary words for feelings like elated, blue, down, rejected, disappointed, and angry. This is North Carolina standards. I bet it's everywhere. Have students generate additional vocabulary words that extend their emotions and vocabulary. Remember, guys, only 30-something% of third and eighth graders are at grade level for math and reading. For math, remember that. Lead a class activity that asks students to identify feelings they might have in different situations using vocabulary. Set up a small group discussion that allows students to discuss how and why emotions can influence our behavior. Use a literature section. This is math, guys. And have students identify a time where they've had the same feeling as a character. And what else? Let's see. Use a novel, short story to discuss. I mean, it goes on and on. Now, we've got a couple of trolls tonight. We've got one, Erica Hall. Why do you block listeners who disagree with you? Let me tell you about Erica Hall. You guys, you're going to get this. I'm going to block Erica. And her husband, Alan, had been on. You're going to get folks, they're what's called social malcontents. And they get very upset, Lisa. You know this, Jason, we're in the field. You get social malcontents that want to shut you down and say mean things and all that. You're going to have to face them, because we're fighting for the lives of our children. So Erica wants to know why she's blocked. Well, I think her and her husband had about 45 comments today that were god awful. But again, when you are speaking truth and when you're trying to protect the children, people like this particular person who champions drag time story hours in our town, they're going to get mad because they know we're coming for them. Cockroaches with the light. Cockroaches through the light. So let's talk about, so watered down standards, etc. Here's what I think we're not seeing enough of. And so again, talking about these sexual overtones, etc., it has brought out the trolls, and that's fine. But we really need to be talking to and messaging people who are really, really affected by this. And I think it is, Jason, the parents who cannot afford the tutoring. They can't say, wow, your end of grade test was abysmal. I mean, that's the end of the conversation. There's no hope. Mm-hmm. We need to message to these parents, right, about the reality of this, what this is.
Well, and also the grading systems aren't what they used to be. So students can be, they could make A's and B's, or pass all along the way and fail the standardized test that the states use to measure, fail those horribly. As far as what can parents do? Honestly, talk to their local administrators. What philosophical framework does this campus use? Do we believe that the individual is worthy, and are we working to lift up the individual, or are we working to break down the individual? And if we're working to break down the individual, why, and how is that going to be helpful to that child? If we really believe in the whole child, then why are we breaking them down into pieces?
And putting them into groups.
Yeah, and putting them into groups
and making them hate each other. So
Marxist identified groups.
That's correct. And so, I think that when we look at this, guys, you need to look at social emotional learning from a state level. You're going to be told, and by the way, here's how you do it. You go to your state board of ed and they will have it on their website. We did have our superintendent here say Hey, parents, if you're pissed off about the Castle SEL on the website, stop looking at the website. True story. So you'll start, Lisa, with looking at the website, right, and finding that out. What's the next step parents should take?
Well, I had huge traction educating my district board members, and I'm sure this state board members probably won't be as amenable, honestly, in my state, but educating them about CASEL themselves, because I think what people need to understand is that CASEL is the organization that stands for the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, and they're the one that set the standards for all SEL programs. So no matter what ones you are bringing in, they have to be measured by CASEL standards. And since CASEL has changed their standards to transformative SEL, these programs will change their programs to measure up to that, and every single one you bring in, if they are measured by CASEL and their CASEL Select program or whatever, they will have these elements in them. And I think once parents and, of course, your district members understand that this is what's going to happen no matter what, they will distance themselves. They will see that, hey, this is not acceptable. I think, myself living in a town that's very religious, Utah's a very religious state. When we were able to expose the sexual third-party links and such coming through these programs, it really got the community riled up. We went to having maybe a few parents in a boardroom for a meeting to having the full room filled up and then like 2 overflow rooms, because parents do not want their children to be sexualized.
Yeah.
I think also the other thing is that finding common ground, because you know what, like this is not about the ideologies themselves necessarily. I think every parent agrees that we should be able to parent our own children, that we should be able to decide what values, attitudes, and beliefs our children have, and that is the parent's prerogative. If you want to teach your kid about transgender this and sexual that is your prerogative as a parent. But they don't want their kids come. If you're an atheist, you don't want to have your kids go to school and learn about religion, right? And same thing. It's like
it's against the establishment clause. Not one thin dime of federal or state dollars can promote any religion inside of schools, and yet it can promote racism and indecent material.
Right. Right. So it's about getting the whole community to agree that something like this is not helpful or healthy for our children.
Something else that I heard in that CASEL video the other day, they mentioned that once upon a time, parent engagement was an important factor of education, but CASEL has noticed what is happening between educators and parents, and it seemed that they are wanting to bridge that SEL is something to bridge that. So what I'm wondering is if CASEL is realizing that this shift that they made was perhaps a well-intentioned misstep. And I wonder if they'll go, because
Lisa and this is the granola in you coming out, Jason.
Well,
this is we need you. Lisa and I are going.
Well, and rightfully so. It's when we think about what's really happening to children and what are the future consequences, it brings that out.
Yeah.
But if we can bring people to the table, and that's one of the other things that I'm doing, and the information for this is on the Empowered Pathways.
no one destroying, right? We need to know. Lisa and I can't destroy.
I feel bringing awareness and bringing attention to what is going on, the work that you guys are doing. But I know that there's good-hearted people within CASEL. I know that there's good-hearted people that are doing SEL work all across the nation, but the tools that they're being given right now are tools for destruction. They're being given.
Well, Jason, I want to point something else out for just one moment, and I want you to take a look at it. And here's my skepticism, okay? And it's this. Have y'all read this?
Yes.
Good,
Yeah.
because I wrote it. Yay. So this is in the Federalist. I wrote this in the Federalist. And basically, you know, we're talking about the wealthy and powerful organizations are trying to monkey around with our education system and with the agenda. And you've got, you know, the investors are Bill Gates. Of course, his other program was a abysmal failure, Common Core. Now he's screwing around with this, and he's, you know, a lot of people think he's a very evil guy. You've got Zuckerberg, who is all for censoring, very evil guy. And to your point, Lisa, they're partnering with third-party organizations that even Zuckerberg's education, the stuff that he's pumping out there, they're telling fifth graders how to do education with voter stuff. So they're already interfering or trying to with our voter integrity via youth.
Yes.
In social emotional learning classes.
Well, really, I mean, I think they want globalized citizenship education, right? There's certain things that they want kids to believe. And they want them to believe in climate change. They want them to believe, you know, like you're saying,
intersectionality,
election systems. They want inclusivity. When you talk about inclusivity, they talk about the acceptance of sexual variance. You know, that's the problem with these surveys, is that they measure words like that, and they get to define those words and those competencies of what the children are achieving. I think I would love to look at, you know, Castle with rose-colored glasses, but really I've watched enough of their webinars to to not feel that way about them. I don't think it was unintentional. I think it's very intentional.
With the leadership, Jason, you're saying you think
I'm saying
the leadership might be suppressing the good-natured people, because I mean, I see.
Well, they had leadership change.
You don't, right?
And I don't know Dr. Samuel. I don't know of her. But what I did hear her say was we need to clarify what SEL is. So I would love for her
clarify, Lisa,
to clarify what SEL is.
Well,
and
I mean,
I would love to I hope to visit with Castle about the framework that I've developed. I hope to say this is something designed to uplift the individual. This is an SEL framework that is not about collecting data. It is about improving well-being and our ability to get along with each other. And that's it.
Well, and to your point, though, I will say this. We know that 90% of all people do not go into education to harm people. They do not go into, I mean, I'm a social science person. You know, I did my undergrad in psychology and advanced coursework in psychology. You go in it to help. But look, Jason, with these funders, okay.
Oh, I agree.
We find a lot of malevolent stuff here.
Yep.
And the leadership, it's hard for us to look at Castle as anything other than a malevolent force. And with them aligning with the World Economic Forum, that's the coup de grace for me. I'm like, look, if it aligns with the World Economic Forum,
I'm right there with you on that too.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm right there with you on that.
Partners with International Planned Parenthood, right? They're sexualizing our children early so that they can eventually fund their abortions.
Okay, what? So Castle's partnering with Planned Parenthood.
So Castle, and so I think, I don't know if you have my chart that I sent to Sloan, but so the same folks who brought in Common Core to nationalize educational standards, right? They had it, in order to have more collectivism, you have to have more government control.
Yes.
So they federalized the education system through Common Core, bringing in those national standards. And they did that specifically. The same folks who did that are the same folks who fund and put forth social emotional learning. And it was very intentional. So when you talk about these funders, I mean, all you have to do is follow the money to figure out what the ideology is, right? You're looking at, like I said, UNESCO, who partners with International Planned Parenthood Federation. You've got the Novo Foundation. You've got the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, the Rockefeller Philanthropic Organization. All of these people have a very big agenda, and especially the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative and the Bill Gates Foundation, which want to collect this data as human capital on our kids.
Absolutely. Look, big data is the business of Facebook, and you need to have big data sets to do that. So let's go through this one more time, because I want to reread this for everyone, and I want you to understand, okay, so that we're all on the same page. So Castle defines SEL as a process through which youth and adults understand and manage emotions. What emotions? According to who?
Now, Sloan,
Gates, the government.
I feel this is the old definition, the one that
Correct.
was
But,
good,
yeah.
good, you know.
But even for the sake of argument, let's just go through this. This is, by the way, what the DPI, the Department of Public Instruction, here wants you to see. So all across the country, when you go tonight, maybe you're already doing it, surfing on the website at your Department of Ed at the state level, you may find this definition. So let's go through this. To set and achieve positive goals. Positive to who? What goals? According to Zuckerberg or Gates and their needs, or the government? Feel and show empathy for others. Certain others. If somebody's parents were at January 6th rally, I can guarantee you there won't be any empathy for those others. Establish and maintain positive relationships and make responsible decisions. This is responsible according to who? So you get my drift. The litmus test for the people that are funding it and for the government, we know what that is, right? We can guess. So there's no, to your point, Jason, there's no concrete stuff. When you talk about the concept of resilience, it shouldn't be a problem to have concrete things that they are. It's, it's 1, 2, and 3, and here's how we're going to get there, 3, 4, and 5. This is intentionally so nebulous. But when you put into those sentences outcomes by the government, Lisa, attitudes and beliefs that the government finds positive. Well, okay, so if you're progressive and you have a progressive governor, you may like that. Like, I'm all in for it. Okay, well, keep that, and then let a Trump-style governor come in, and I guarantee you who's going to be out there on the damn protest line in a hurry.
You bet. Well, the framework
is there for bias.
Right. And that's the thing. I think, a lot of people think and I respect your views, Jason. I think a lot of people think SEL is a program that started out really good and got hijacked by bad people. But I really believe that it was more of a bait and switch. They're like, all right, now we're going to create national standards for your belief systems. And now we're going to.
I can see that. I can see that too.
Jason, it's coming. That what we're looking at is creating the raw data that will feed the algorithm. So we'll feed the artificial intelligence behind social credit score.
I can see that. Yeah.
Not perfected, guys. It's not perfected in China yet, right? But the very company helping with that, SAS Analytics, look it up, see if they're a player in your area. Mm-hmm. They're helping China perfect it. How? Well, they're based in China and in Beijing also. Damn well, if a company works in China, an American company, they're working with the CCP by definition. On their website, and you'll see they're bragging about, being based in Beijing, I think they're one of the best employers in Beijing. And also, they brag about training the Chinese to create algorithms, artificial intelligence, machine learning, stuff like that. You know what it's being used for.
Right. Well, and that's why everything has to be online, because they have to measure, these programs will measure how easily they can manipulate the child to get from point A to point B, to get to that competency that they want the child to have.
Right. It's all that talk of competency. Can either one of you explain to the audience what that means, please?
I'll let you do that, Jason. You're the SEL teacher.
Okay. Well, just the SEL competencies, the areas to focus on are self-awareness, self-management, relationship skills, social awareness, and responsible decision making.
Okay, so let me put that again. Yeah.
And supposedly SEL is to strengthen all of those capacities.
Here's one. By the way, Al Barnes, you're wrong. SAS is it's a huge company, and in fact, it's the only big tech company that is private. It's not public, and it's based right here in Cary, North Carolina. Big time political player, big time donor to every politician now sitting on the education committee here in North Carolina. So one of the competencies, guys, is relationship skills and agency and effectiveness. Guess what, Jason? On the left, you were digging this, but on the right, you're going to see the changes.
Now, I see the changes from what I even just said when I said self-awareness, self-management, decision-making. When I said all of those competencies, and then I'm looking right here at this screen, all of these are dealing primarily with the collective.
But this is, when they say competency, guys, this is right off, what you're seeing is right off of the DPI's website here in North Carolina. Again, you're probably, maybe they created these materials, maybe they did not, but you're going to find it. Responsible decision-making, we went over. Again, you're right. Reflecting on the broader ethical consequences of one's decisions for intra and intergroup relations and institutional relations.
See, there's nothing about the individual developing their social and emotional well-being and who they are as a person.
Right. And in fact, there is a 2018 white paper that Castle put out, their director of research, Robert Yeagers, I think is his last name. And it literally outlines each of those competencies and how they're going to change it to be through an equity lens. And I kid you not, it sounds like it could be written by Karl Marx himself. They talk about wealth and dominant U.S. culture. I mean, it's really, really awful. And they literally
white teachers. Yeah. And then you'll see here, Black Lives Matter is right here on the right. So if you do nothing else but look at this right-hand side, you will understand that it is critical race theory in the classroom. Again, these documents, they come right from our Department of Education. Before they remove it, it's removed here. But before they remove it in your state, you need to go right now, get online and see if it's there, Lisa, because you know and I know that that's probably how you guys found it. They put it together.
Well, if you go to Second Step's website, they talk on there. I mean, that's how I started my whole journey in researching all of this. It started with a board agenda and me seeing Second Step on there. And then I was like, oh, let's go look at their website. What does Second Step believe? And I can guarantee if parents go to the website of their, you can even just look in a internet search, the name of your SEL program and the word equity or systemic racism, and you'll see what their stance is on that. And if they subscribe to Castle's transformative SEL, you can bet your bottom dollar they're looking at power and privilege and all the tenets of critical race theory.
Yep. So we're going to close it out, but I hope this has been helpful. I mean, if we look at the big theme of this, what it is, and maybe we should get comfortable with this verbiage. Maybe, I'm just throwing it out there, we stop saying CRT is here, CRT is here. This is a program. It's not innocent. It's not by accident. Okay. To really destroy the innocence of children. When you have fourth graders and third graders self-disclosing in front of the classroom and it's not comfortable and the teacher is goading them into do it. We have a tip line, guys. We get stuff like this all the time. That's social emotional learning. It is destroying the innocence and the privacy of children. It is racializing children and saying, hey, all white children, you have the original sin of being born racist from 6 months old. That's what transformative SEL is doing. You saw it. You saw it. Sexualizing children. This nonsense of having hardcore pornography in the library, but we're not presenting it. It's bullshit. There's no other word for it. And I tell you, it is an act of aggression towards families. It is an act of dominance towards children. And it is manipulative and cruel and sick.
Yep. They want to destroy the nuclear family and we can't let them.
Yeah.
That is a goal. That
is the goal. And so what can we do? Well, in North Carolina, we have been writing, Education First Alliance has been writing and exposing things at the state level. Why? Well, let me tell you why. And you need to find out if it works this way in your state. Let's say you get a school board unanimously elected in the fall and they say no SEL. Here's the problem with that. They'll immediately have to cut off 25% of their funding or their federal funding. Okay. Maybe they can weather that. Maybe they can't. Number one. Number two, SEL is in all 12 academic standards. It's mandated. Number three, teachers and principals and superintendents are required to do reporting to the Department of Public Instruction. They're evaluated on social emotional learning. So they're going around the board. Okay. Number four, the Department of Public Instruction here, they offer teacher training statewide. So there's 4 ways. If you're a board member, if you're a school member, they're going to go around you. So a lot of the things we do at the school board, we're spinning our wheels because it's mandated at the state level. So I want you guys to go to the state level and find out, number one, if it's there. Number two, if it's mandated in the standards. Number three, how do teachers report on this? In other words, do the teachers have to report to the state? If so, it doesn't matter what the school board does, right? If you're going to get fired or if you're not going to get a promotion if you're not doing SEL, am I wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how school boards are irrelevant. And so Jason and Lisa, we're talking about the feds and the state controlling curriculum at the district level, which is unconstitutional. It's against the state constitution, and it is certainly against the federal constitution. It's a fact.
Absolutely.
It is a fact. So that's why I'm hoping to, through Empowered Pathways, get out and talk to communities, talk to school leaders, talk to school boards about what is happening with SEL, while also attuning to the social emotional needs of that community, restoring what's been broken, helping children be resilient, helping educators be resilient, especially in this time and era. So if SEL is in the standards, I have figured out a way to do SEL that does not involve racializing, sexualizing, breaking down the individual, and a way for us to put good, positive ideas into our working communities, into our schools, and say, no, thank you. We reject this Marxist worldview. We are going to move forward with dignity and honor.
So here's the thing. I mean, Jason, I want every school in the country to use your SEL program. You do great teacher training and you do it the way it should be. But as you said, Lisa, in every state, they have the castle paradigm that I just showed you. I just put up 3 competencies. We read through them. And so, Jason, if our state or if another state wanted to get involved with your program and the castle paradigm was there and teachers are being measured on that, this is the problem, right? Is that a school district can say, I want Jason Littlefield's program in here. It makes sense. Lisa, I don't think that they're going to be able to do it whilst having those standards at the state level. Am I wrong?
You're absolutely right. Because a lot of states won't even adopt programs that aren't CASEL approved. So if they're not CASEL approved, they won't even look at them or consider them.
So Robert is asking a good question. Do boards have any pressure to power the state board? They have power to sue. So if you're a political person and you're looking at, wow, how do we change that? Perhaps you have several school boards that you're going to try to win, and they get the same lawyer, and that lawyer says, I'm going to sue on behalf of these 5 or 6 districts because you're breaking the Constitution here of the state of North Carolina and every other state, because you are mandating curriculum from the top down. Something, by the way, our superintendent swears up and down they're not doing. So don't be surprised when you confront superintendents and they will look you right in the face and say, I don't know what you're talking about. That's a local school board issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Most certainly not. This is most certainly not. And we just illustrated that. So, Jason, your program has really been catching on. And in I would imagine private schools and charter schools who say, hey, there's value and there is, right? I mean, what parent doesn't want help teaching their child anger management?
Mm-hmm.
I do.
Yeah, or goal setting. Yeah.
Yep.
Working towards that goal. Yeah.
Right. That's the sad part about this whole thing, is that what Jason's trying to do is it can be taught in a way that is fulfilling and is wonderful for the children, but the way they're doing it is damaging. And they're dressing it up real pretty. Okay, empathy and perspective taking, but we're going to change the definition of empathy and perspective taking from K to 5 so that it's not just be nice to those who have different perspectives than you. It's now accept their ideologies as truth. So
right, and by the way, we're going to inculcate you with the ideology that we want.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly.
Right. And so, guys, this is the government controlling the very fundamentals of your child. And again, you present this, parents, I want you to try this. So if you're encountering parents out there that believe the schools are systemically racist, and by the way, you need to be having conversations with those people. You need to understand where they're coming from, and you need to talk to them. And I found that if you present certain facts, then they'll evaluate it. Remember, I mean, here's how I do it. I did when I talk to people, who am I? I'm nobody. So I don't go and say, do you know what's happening? Asking questions is important. For instance, well, Mary, I appreciate the fact that you think that schools are systemically racist. I value your opinion, and you should. Then why would you let a racist teacher or principal or school system look at this personal data that your child's filling out? Show them the survey. Ask them the question. Let them think what they want to think, right? But I think asking people the question and appreciating their value system. For instance, if and a lot of people do feel like that there is over policing in schools and out of schools. To me, this seems like the ultimate police state.
Laying the groundwork for it, for sure.
Yeah. And I think understanding how that narrative of systemic racism is happening is important, Sloan, because a lot of times this happens because these school boards and these districts are having equity audits, right? And a lot of time that comes in through accreditation. Companies like Cognia, who believes in systemic racism, and they're or perhaps maybe systemic planning, and so they'll take the school district's data, they'll point to any inequality in outcome and say that's evidence of systemic racism, and therefore you need this SEL program or you need this thing to be.
So it's a gig. It's a they're selling the hot
racism in
dog
the gaps.
and the bun. Right, they're selling the hot dog and the bun. The problem, the solution.
Right.
It's a great gig if you can get it.
Very
right.
Yes.
Right. And in your state, parents, I want to encourage you to do this. You know, we're focusing a lot on the companies that are doing it, right? But in a way, you almost can't blame them, because if there's a market for it, to make millions of dollars, you must want to do that. You need to look and see who's signing the contracts for this stuff. The signer of the contract, you need to put a full court press, whoever that is. Find out, look at the statutes. Okay, my statutes say the state superintendent has this power of the board, this. Who signed the contract for Castle or this or that? Because whoever's pen is going down there, right? Go after them. They're a government actor, right? They're paying taxpayer dollars. They're in charge. Find out who those people are. That's where the pressure needs to be brought to bear.
Well, and I can tell you what we did in our district, Sloan, is that I had another parent and I went into the district office because, you know, you can't look at the curriculum because it's online and it's copyrighted. You can't look at it unless you go into the district office, have an administrator sign you in. And we spent 30 hours because we understood there are parents that cannot do this. And we literally spent over 30 hours at the district office. We outlined everything. We put out a document for the other parents to say, hey, this is the problems we have with just the 8th grade curriculum. And that was just the 8th grade, Sloan, 30 plus hours, because there's so many handouts and things. And we put out guides, like a 20-page document and then a 3-page document saying, here's where you can find in these lessons where they're pointing to power and privilege and where they're trying to turn them into social justice activists for particular causes, where they're saying parents are a roadblock to kids' success and kind of never mentioning the parent as a supporter of the child. And so we created that resource for parents so that they could go look at it themselves and be like, wow, this is actually real. Like what these people are talking about, you can see these ideologies coming in, it's there. And I would encourage other people to go look at the curriculums.
Lisa, I think that parents they hear this is going on, they'll watch this show, and then the next day they'll go with their hair on fire and say, oh my God, and understandably. But evidence is king. The biggest mistake people make is they don't have evidence. And we have a hotline that people have actually, Jason, teachers have given us stacks and stacks and stacks and files, Lisa, of stuff, because teachers know that it's wrong. And so we've got primary documentation up to our eyeballs, but evidence is king. You must have that before you do anything. You can't go in there and say, hey, I know this is going on, and probably is, by the way, but Lisa, doing that and providing a service for others. So a lot of parents want to know how to get involved. Well, involved for one parent may be sharing this video on social media. They've never done anything like that before, and that's them getting involved. I mean, you know, some parents, they go to their school board meeting. I'm not a big fan of that, but, you know, putting pressure on people is important. But if you're going to your school board meeting and complaining about social emotional learning and surveys, I would urge you not to, and here's why. They may not know. First of all, I talk to school board members all the time throughout the state. They don't know what this program is. And then when they find out, there's nothing they can do to stop it. So going and raising hell about this may not be the best tact. It may be the best tact to join our fight and put a lot of leverage at the state level, Lisa, to pass a law like the one I said, when I mentioned, and we're going to push this, that says, hey, any of these questions, Jason, that we're going over and talking about, got to have parent opt-in. Got to show them the questions first. And by the way, who the hell's going to sign? Hey, maybe maybe parents want that, but it's the option and the parental involvement that legislators must give to us, and they must stop it. Sherry, yours didn't know what it is. Look, also, when you talk to your school boards, be a resource for them, a consultant for them. Don't go in there and say, you SOB, I know you're doing this and blah, blah, blah. I have to tell you, I've had board members, Lisa, on both sides of the aisle. It doesn't matter. They genuinely want to help. And once they find out this is going on, they're like, oh, crap. You mean there's nothing I can do? The only thing you can do is resist.
Well, and I would say, yeah, Sloan, we were fortunate. We educated our board members in our district, and they, it took a few months of some, pushing and pulling, but the end of this last year, they actually voted Second Step out of our district. Now they're still trying to toy with what they're going to use for SEL now.
Jason, we're going to use Jason.
Yeah, right. And we're bringing forth a lot of really great, even within our own state, we have great people writing SEL curriculum that has nothing to do with this racial and equity lens crap that we're seeing in the CASEL programs. And I think there's even programs that don't want to subscribe to CASEL's thing, but in order to stay relevant and stay in business, they have to.
Well, yeah, that's just it. I mean, I think it's always a good idea. Look, the more that we can decouple from national organizations like Cognia, like all these things. And so if you're wanting to get involved and you're wanting to make a difference, that's another thing. You just, if you're running for office, run on a platform of, hey, all these national organizations, the reporting, we're done, right? It's North Carolina first here.
Yeah,
because you're not right, and then you're not at the whim of this. That makes a lot of people. By the way, you want to make some damn enemies, go after your state education system, because that's how a lot of the spending is, right? And you'll find people. You're going to bring out the snakes, Jason, because you're going to say, "Hey, we are going to cut out the grift, and we're going to give support and combat pay to good teachers." That's being in fraud, waste, and abuse.
Yeah. We got a lot of work to do.
We got a lot of work to do, guys. A lot of work to do. So I want to thank everybody for joining me tonight. I'm sure we're going to continue the conversation. And I really believe that, we've got to get rid of CASEL. We've got to get active. And we got to get Jason's program in. Jason, again, can you type in the chat box the name of your company and the website? Lisa, will you type in the chat box your website, because you've got a lot of great resources on your website. I love what you did with, I think you've got, is it a bill tracker, or you have some sort of algorithm or set in there of how good bills are for Utahns?
Yes. So the organization that I belong to, Utah Parents United, has wonderful resources for parents, parent classes. I gave one for UPU on transgender stuff, et cetera, et cetera. They've got the education bills they're tracking in the Utah legislature right now. We're involved in quite a few. And I love that the legislators trust the fact that we're so involved in education that they come to us and say, hey, can you read our bills and give us your insight and feedback? So yes, there's a lot of great resources for parents in Utah, as well as parents across the nation on the website.
Okay, and I'm going to put that website up right now. I mean, you're one of the only ones, you're a first mover in this space, which is really good, because again, we're understandably overcome with all the CRT. Well, this is where it pushed in. This is the Trojan horse here. This is Lisa's website, so check that out for resources. And again, share this video with 10 friends, or just 10 people. They don't have to be friends. You'll be friends after you share this, I promise you, because we're saving a lot of kids here, right? So thank you all. Have a great night. And thank you to my